Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today, I'm excited to have my new friend, Bobby Casey, with me. And Bobby's going to be a bit of a unique story because he is I'm going to say, stateless founder. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. He's a bit of a digital nomad and he's runs multiple companies. Bobby, why don't you just take a second, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on today. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to get on here and talk to your audience and have a wee little chat with you. And that's interesting. I don't think I've ever been described as a stateless founder before, but
Or
I,
multi-state founder, I guess. It's
yeah,
more accurate.
it's funny. I actually have some clients. I have a couple of clients that actually have gone stateless. Like in my consulting uh, clients, like I have a couple of American clients who moved to countries and got permanent residency. And like for example, I have one client who moved to New Zealand and got permanent residency there. He got it through investment. He ended up buying like two bed and breakfast properties, and got residency through investment. And he gave up his U.S. citizenship. And I was on the phone with him, like, I'm like, are you crazy? Like you want to give up your citizenship without having another one? I said, don't you want to, like, why didn't you wait until you could get your New Zealand citizenship first? And he said, actually, I prefer to be stateless. And I said, but then you're not going to have an effective travel document. New Zealand, like, you can get a travel document, but it's terrible. Like you could like a non-citizen travel document. But like you have to have visas for pretty much everywhere in the world. And he's like, I don't care. I don't want to travel. Like I have a bed and breakfast. Like I don't even like going. He literally told me, he's like, I don't even like going into town. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I am not stateless. I am more like you said, Jeff, multi-state. I've traveled a lot. I've lived in uh, at least 10 different countries that I can think of. I've been to, I don't know, 80 plus or so countries. Currently, I live between three countries. I have a place in Mexico, I have a place in Europe, and I have a place in the US. Ironically, I spend the least amount of time in the US. And actually, from this year going forward, I'll probably spend even less time in the US. But I'll keep the place. I have a really nice condo there, and I've got my stuff, and it's good to show up and have socks and underwear in one place, right? Um, so yeah, I run three different companies. I've been an entrepreneur my entire adult life. I've actually never had a real job. I started my first, let's call it air quotes, real company, I guess you'd say, when I was 19. I had previous businesses before that as a teenager, and I did have other jobs as a kid. Like I worked bagging groceries at the grocery store, working at the go-kart track, stuff like that as a kid. And then I did, hustling things like cleaning people's yards, mowing grass, stuff like that. But my first quote real business, I was 19, which failed miserably. Another one when I was 20, which failed miserably. And then I had another company when I was like 20, late 20 or 21, that did pretty well. And I ran that company for about 12 or 13 years and sold it in my early 30s. During that period of time, I also had a couple of other businesses. I had a real estate company. I also bought and sold a restaurant during that time in my late 20s. And so my journey kind of got started to what I'm doing now at that time, because I ended up hiring a guy like me to help me with asset protection planning, company structure, tax optimization, stuff like that. And that guy kind of sort of became a mentor. And at that time, well, I say at that time, still today, all of my friends are entrepreneurs. I don't even know people with jobs anymore. Like I literally don't have, I can't even think of anybody other than my own employees. I can't think of anybody that has like normal jobs. And even my own employees don't have normal jobs. They work remotely. They don't punch a clock. They don't track hours or anything like that. But during that time, all my friends were entrepreneurs, and I went to this guy who helped me, and I said, "Hey, I got a bunch of friends that are in my situation. What if I bring them in and work with you? Would you help teach me how to do this process, this strategic planning and company structure and asset protection and all this stuff?" And he's like, "I don't care. Bring me clients. We can split the money. It's fine." So that's what I did. And over the next couple of years, I started working with him to do that. And I was really fascinated by it. It was like solving puzzles. It was like so much fun. Like it was so much fun to sit down with an entrepreneur and like go through his business, his finances, his personal situation, all these things to try to solve this very particular problem. And I eventually sold the other businesses. I sold the restaurant, got out of the real estate. I sold the other company, and I had like a real, let's say I had a life-changing moment. That could be a whole podcast by itself, but I had a life-changing moment that said, I need to rethink the way I do my life. And so what do I want to do? And I thought, I really love doing this. So let's turn this into a business. So that was around 2008 or 9, maybe. I started doing what I do, and I started doing this consulting thing where I do basically tax, residency, company structure, asset protection planning for predominantly location independent entrepreneurs. Basically business owners who don't really have like a real base. So it could be an entrepreneur who runs a software company. I mean, maybe they live in Des Moines, Iowa, but the business itself is completely virtual. Or it could be somebody from Des Moines, Iowa, who moves to Argentina and is trying to figure out the proper legal structure and all that stuff. And over the next few years, I kind of spun off a couple of other businesses from that. One of them being a trust company in the Caribbean, and another one being a company formation service in the U.S. We do U.S. company formation and registered agent service and bank account opening, tax filings, bookkeeping, blah, blah, blah. All the things you kind of need for a startup. And that's kind of what I've been doing almost, well, officially I've been doing it since 2009. So what is that? 17 years. Unofficially, I've been doing this. It's like 2001 or 2 or something like that. So 20 plus years. So I've worked with, I probably at this point, I probably have clients in 100 plus countries. We've dealt with tax optimization strategies for people from 100 different countries. How to properly structure their business, how to avoid like making huge mistakes in getting their company structured, asset protection strategies to make sure you keep your money. Which is funny. You laugh, but it's true. Yeah. Like, and kind of the thing I always tell people is like, as an entrepreneur, we all know how hard it is to make money. Like it's like magic, right? Like you're trying to find the right formula. You're spinning all the plates, right? And you try to find this right formula of, okay, I've got this right product, and I've got my marketing right, and I've got my website right, and I've got my product message right, and I have a good bookkeeper, and I have like a good salesperson, and I've got a good assistant and all this stuff. And you're like, okay, do I have it all right? And then all of a sudden in your business, everything kind of comes into alignment, and then sales start happening. And you're like, oh my God, I've got a business, right? So making the money is hard, but sometimes keeping the money is even harder. And what I've found is if you have the proper strategies and the proper planning in place, it's way easier to keep your money than make more.
Yeah. And for the record, Bobby,
most people don't do that. But most people don't do that. Yeah.
The reason I laugh is the number of people I see, they obsess over every detail of making the money, and then they don't give any thought to how do you protect it.
True. Yeah.
And that makes me cringe because I know, business comes with risk, and, it's especially construction, you're one mistake away from bankruptcy. And it's, so let's talk about some of the mistakes you see, because I think I'm going to guess you've been there, done that. You've seen it all. What do you wish people knew before they called you? Let's start with that.
By the way, good point about construction company. I grew up in a construction family. My dad owned a large commercial construction company almost my entire childhood. He worked for one when I was born. He was a partner in a firm when I was born, and when I was 3 years old, he started a commercial construction, and they built big things like banks and shopping centers and stuff like that, government buildings. And they did have, like, they had a couple of instances, big problems. Like, this is a good anecdotal example, though. They had a roofer. I remember this as a kid, because when I was a kid growing up, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My grandpa also had like a chain of restaurants before I was born. My dad had construction company and real estate. And my childhood growing up is we talked business. We sat around the table. I knew about filing taxes when I was like 13 years old. I started trading stocks when I was 14 because I knew how to read like financial statements and 10Ks and all that stuff when I was 14. And I remember when I was a kid, we had this like thing come up in my dad's business where he had a roofer. The employee of a roofing subcontractor, the roof collapsed and he fell and the guy died. He got killed. And in that state, you only had like the subcontractor only had to carry workers' compensation insurance if you had two or more than two employees, excluding the owner. And so this company had the owner and two employees. So he did not carry workers' comp. So the liability, and so they signed basically like a disclaimer or whatever, saying like they always do that when they take on a new sub, saying that the GC, the general contractor, is not liable in case something happens. But in that scenario, somebody died. So, of course, the lawsuit came back to my dad's company, the GC. Turned out the guy that died, he had a stay-at-home spouse and a newborn baby. And so I remember, like, they ended up suing the sub, but the sub, he just kind of vanished. He just like poof, disappeared off the face of the planet. And then it went to my dad's company, and they ended up suing, and they, the insurance paid a big chunk of it, but the lawsuit was way more than the liability coverage. And it's crazy. So I remember, like, as a kid, my dad talking about it, that they ended up having to pay that guy's salary with cost of living increases for 18 years because he had a newborn. And then they had to pay like a lump sum at the end to put that kid through college. And that was like the result of the lawsuit, in addition to like the big lump sum. So like it costs a lot of money, and there were things he could have done to protect against that, but he didn't do it. And so I see a lot of mistakes startups make. So to your point, what are some of the mistakes startups make? I mean, some of the basic mistakes are like not validating your business model before you go and get started. Like, people get excited and they're like, I've got the greatest idea ever. No one has ever seen this. Like, I'm going to have zero competition and this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. Well, that sounds lovely in your head, but the problem is, if no one's ever seen it, there's also not a market for it, which means you've got to go out and create an entire market for a concept that does not exist. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do. It's not impossible. Don't get me wrong. And there's plenty of businesses that, iconic names in business that exist because of this thing. Like Amazon is an iconic name in business, and that exists because of this. Because when they started, nobody was selling books online, right? And they became like this major iconic thing. But Bezos and team, they had to create an entire like demand for a business that no one knew they needed, and that's an extremely difficult thing to do. So I think it's most, and I'm sure, Jeff, you've seen this too, but most business people, most entrepreneurs that start a business now, right? We see a problem, we see something, we like, you know what, like I could do this better, faster, or cheaper, or some combination of that, or I can take this product and combine it with something else, you know, and turn it into this new thing, but I'm attracting people from both of these. You know, like, I don't know, a silly one, you see like a coffee shop with, you know, like for people with cats or something. Like, I know that sounds silly, but that's a thing now, right? Like,
That's
maybe
the thing.
you've even seen it. Like, there's freaking coffee shops where people bring their cats and they have like playgrounds for cats at coffee shops. I
Yep.
never thought of that. I don't like cats, but so, you know, it'll be a non-issue for me. But there are a gazillion people that love coffee and love cats, and they put these things together, right? So there's things like that that exist, and that's how most entrepreneurs start their business, which is, in my opinion, the easier path, the safer path, and in most ways, unless you are a major visionary with major funding, better to go down a path where you already have a marketplace to sell to, and you just do it better, faster, cheaper, or you combine things to attract people into the same market. So validating your business idea is a big mistake people make, or not validating it. And then you go out and you're like, you know what, this thing's going to be amazing. Let me go print some business cards and put a sign on the side of my truck, and, you know, build a website and all this. And then you spend 10 grand or whatever, and then nobody knocks on your door because nobody knows about the thing. So go validate the business idea first. Get a customer. You don't have a business until you have a customer. I don't care how pretty your website is. You don't have a business without a customer. So go find somebody that thinks your product or service is so good they want to give you money for it, and then, you know, start dealing with the structure and, you know, the business cards, and, you know, picking the right font for your buy now button and stuff like that. You know, I see people get obsessed, like, should it be green or blue on the buy now button? Like, bro, who cares? Like, launch the website and see if anybody buys first, you know? Like,
I'm going to go one up on you there, Bobby. I have a friend who's been, quote, in business for 6 months. And I said, I'm struggling here. I can't find the buy now button. She's like, oh, I haven't figured out what I sell yet.
Jesus Christ, what the hell?
She's been marketing and promoting a business for 6 months. And I'm like, I feel you missed the main point of business.
Yeah, oh my God.
Sorry, you're not going to get that out of your head for a while, right?
Oh my God. She literally launched a website and a business with no product to sell.
Yeah.
Like, oh, whew. So
sorry, I just broke you.
I've seen a little bit of, yeah, you just broke me. I've seen a little bit of that, but I don't, like, I have a friend of mine. I'm not going to name names. He's kind of a high profile guy, so I don't want to name names and pick on him. You probably know this guy, and I could tell you offline who it is. But anyway, he launched a blog, an online blog, just talking about his thoughts. He had no business model for it, but his long-term strategy was to build the audience with his views and his thoughts and experiences and all these things, to build an audience, you know, subscribers and viewers and whatever. And then after a period of time, he was going to launch his books, like, or a couple of books. And then, you know, he added a podcast, and he built an audience that way. And then he launched books, and then he's had products that came after. In his case, I get it. He was already a high profile guy. He already had a lot of money. He already had a lot of things going on. He just used this as an outlet to expose himself as a personal brand. And then as a personal brand, he later launched a product. In that example, I kind of get it, but for the most part, it makes no sense to, like, launch a business without a product like that. Yeah, I would say he was a rare example because he was already a high profile guy. People know who he is. And
he was the product in the first place.
Effectively, yeah, he was the product, and he just had, like, a free newsletter, and he then, like, a few months later, he had a podcast and stuff like that. So anyway, not validating your product is a big one. come on, man, like have a product, find a customer who's willing to give you money, like to figure, like, and actually that's another, a point came into my head. The vast majority of the time, and I say the vast majority, I'm only leaving an outlet there for maybe not every single time, but I would say almost every single time, when you start a business and you launch your business and you launch your product or your service, fast forward 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years down the road, what you sell is almost unrecognizable from what you started with. If you're smart, it's almost unrecognizable from what you started with, because what happens is you launch this product, maybe you get a couple of clients, but then those clients give you feedback and they say, actually, you know, it'd be great if your product did this. It'd be great if your service did this. And what about this feature and this thing and this thing? And what about this? I also need this, which is kind of like a product on a tangent. And so after a few years, you're like, wait, yeah, okay, I need to tweak, add, change, you know, over time. So usually everything changes in the first couple of years anyway, but you got to start with something so that you have a base of, like, so your client base can actually give you feedback on what it is, you know?
Yep.
So
I cringe when people tell me they build in a vacuum. And by the way, there's an epidemic of this right now, because with a lot of layoffs, I'm seeing a lot of new entrepreneurs who were corporate somebodies. And when I say corporate somebodies, they had a Fortune 500 logo on their business card, and people would take their call because, oh, you work at this company. And now as solopreneurs, they're struggling because nobody cares about who they are.
Right. Yeah. Nobody, like, if you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur building a small business, nobody cares. Like, I could call you, like, I mean, your name might in certain circles lend a little bit of clout, but just because you were, I don't know, VP of marketing of General Mills doesn't mean anything when you're launching your own widget company. Like, nobody, like, what are you going to do? You're like, hi, I am, you know, I'm Jeff, former VP of marketing of General Mills, here to sell you a widget. And the guy on the other end is going, I don't care who you were. What does your product do for me? I don't even care what your name is. Like,
let's talk about the widget for a while here.
Yeah, like I do a lot of public speaking, like at events and stuff like that. And I went to a public speaking training a few years ago. And one of the most important things I remember from that public speaking training I went to, like, this guy was brilliant teaching people, like, the right way to craft your speech, especially when you have a short window of time to get it out. And he said, when you start your speech, never, ever start with your name and your bio. Nobody cares who you are and your bio. All they care about is what you can do for them. In a public speech setting, you go to a conference or an event or a trade show or something, and you go sit in the audience for a 30-minute or a 1-hour speech. Nobody wants to listen to your name and bio for 5 minutes. You just wasted 5 minutes of their time. Maybe you dive into the bio after you have your intro of what you're there for, right? And it's the same thing if you have a business. Like, why would I start with, like, if I do a sales call, hi, I'm Bobby Casey, I've got a bachelor's degree. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I see a lot of LinkedIn profiles. One, it was ex-Google, ex-Microsoft, XXX. And I'm like, did you hold a job ever? Like, it just, again, cross that stuff out and tell me who you are and why I care.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, let's jump off. Like, we're going down rabbit holes here. But yeah, so other mistakes I see founders make, depending on the business model you're getting into, but sometimes a big one a lot of them make is not having the right funding when they get started. People think, I'll just run this on cash flow, it'll be fine. I'll get customers in the first month, and then I'll just bootstrap this on cash flow. And maybe that works if you're ridiculously good at sales, and you have a marketplace with a huge demand, and you have magic from the beginning, I guess. But it's very difficult to bootstrap from the very beginning. I don't necessarily mean you need to go out and raise $1 million from VCs, but at a minimum, you need to know when you start. Like I tell people, this sounds maybe completely irresponsible, but I tell people, if you're starting a business, if you have a corporate job now, go out and apply for 5 or 10 credit cards while you still have good credit.
Yep.
Okay. Because once you start that business, you're going to need money. There's going to be a point in those first 5 years of that business where you can't make payroll, and you're going to have to pull credit from somewhere to make your payroll. And your credit's probably going to suck the first couple of years you're in business. So get 5 or 10 credit cards while you still have that VP of marketing at General Mills job, and build up, or get a credit line or a HELOC on your house, or all of the above, but have a way to access some credit facilities, cash, or what you call FFF, friends, family, and fools. That's what it is, right? When you're starting a business and you're going to all your friends and stuff, like, hey, you want to invest in my business? Like, they're only doing that because they love you, but because otherwise they're stupid. Like, that would be so stupid to invest in somebody's startup only because you're friends or family. So that's why you throw the fools in. There's so many. Okay, I'll leave that alone. There's so many dumb things you could do there. It's like I don't take investment money from friends or family anymore. I have in the past in other businesses. Now I refuse, because I prefer to have friends and family than enemies who hate me because I didn't pay them within 5 minutes of the first of the month or something like that.
Yeah.
So make sure you have the financing in place. Whatever you think you need, I'd say quadruple that. Because you're going to be wrong. 100% you're going to be wrong. If you are starting a business thinking I'm going to hire this developer to build out my software, build my marketing platform or my analytics platform or my website or whatever, and I need to budget, let's say $10,000 to pay this developer, I would 10x that, because you're going to need at least 10 times that per developer, because the thing nowadays, developers, that's not a one, that's never a one-off deal. Once you hire a developer, they will work for you forever unless they suck, but then you just replace them with somebody else that's better.
Yeah.
You will have a developer on your team forever in business. I don't care if you are a landscaper mowing residential yards. You're going to have a developer at least some block of hours per month to fix stuff on your website and your analytics and stuff like that. It's just going to happen. There's no way to avoid it. So whatever you think you're going to spend on developers, 10x that number, and budget it monthly, because it's going to be forever. Things like that. People think, oh, but I don't need this. Yes, you do. Yeah, you absolutely do. Get a good bookkeeper as early as you can in your business, because knowing whether you're making money or not is kind of important. And that can sneak up on you if you don't have a good bookkeeper, because you think, there's money in my bank account this month, I'll get a bookkeeper next month. You can't really see where you're bleeding money without a bookkeeper. If you just say, well, the beginning of the month I had 20,000, the end of the month I've got 25. I did pretty good. I paid all my bills. I've got an extra 5K. Well, there might be a glaring hole in that business that you don't know where it is, where you're burning cash. And it might be, you could be making way more money if you just plug that one hole, in my business, we do maybe we should do it more, but every 3 months we go and analyze all the subscriptions we have. For example, software subscriptions, I call it death by SaaS. So
yes.
We analyze death by SaaS every 3 months to see, do we have a software subscription we don't really use anymore? Or maybe we're using another platform that's better and they also offer that service and we can combine it into one thing, stuff like that. So having a bookkeeper will give you like that information. Your bookkeeper can say, like, on average, let's say your 6% of your cost is software, and then 6 months later it balloons up to 12% of your cost is software. Hey, pay attention. Like, you might still be profitable, but you've got a big hole right there. You're burning cash in some place. So have a bookkeeper up front. And then the other thing, which is kind of the beginning, and that's like more what I do, is make sure you have your business structure correct from the beginning. A lot of people don't do that, and they do it completely wrong. They do really dumb mistakes, and I don't mean this to be derogatory and say, hey, dummy, don't do this. I mean it in the sense you don't even know the right questions to ask. So you make mistakes because you don't really even know what you don't know. So I don't know, you go to Reddit or Facebook or something and somebody says, do this. You're like, okay, that sounds good. Like, do the right thing in the beginning, because the big problem is when you're an entrepreneur, it's not a problem. I mean, it's just our nature. As an entrepreneur, Jeff, I'm sure you're exactly the same. And probably everyone listening to this is probably exactly the same, right? We only think about the next thing, the next sale, the next hire, the next deal, the next trade show, the next conference, the next software development, the next product launch. We're all entrepreneurs, all forward thinking. The next thing. Okay, I got to train this new hire. Okay, I've got a conference coming up. I need to prepare for this conference coming up next week. I got to get my marketing material correct. Like, we only prepare for the next thing. We're forward thinking. What we don't think about, I've never met an entrepreneur who loves like bookkeeping. I've never met an entrepreneur who loves doing spreadsheets. I've never met an entrepreneur who loves reading legal contracts. I've never met an entrepreneur who says, you know what I really love to do? And I love to sit down and draft operating agreements for my LLC. Like, I've never met an entrepreneur who cares about that stuff. The problem is, as a startup, you don't care because all you care about is making that first dollar or that first hire or that first deal. But the problem is, once you start getting busy, once your schedule is filled with Zoom calls and Google Meet calls and podcasts and sales meetings and company meetings and, doing payroll and all these things, these normal things that keep us busy, things like your company structure become I'll do it next week. I'll fix that next week. And the I'll fix it next week is always I'll fix it next week. And then magically you have a problem. You have a legal problem. You have a structure problem. You just got sued and realized like you've got major holes. You don't have any asset protection in place, and like people can come in and take your money. Or like, I don't have a tax strategy in place to optimize my taxes, and I've been paying 40% in taxes when I could have been paying 5%, And like I said early on, it's easier to keep the money you make than it is to go find another customer. So that type of thing, people don't want to focus on it. So they're like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Having that strategy in place from the beginning is easier, because if you have it from the beginning, it kind of runs on autopilot. Yeah. But if you wait till like your third year in business to fix your company structure, and now you've got contracts in place, you got your tax ID number, you got bank accounts, you got a merchant account, all these things, and then you hire somebody like me to come in and fix your structure, I might come in and tell you, hey, we need to completely ditch this and start over. And now you're like, oh, shit. I've got a merchant account in place. I've got 12 contracts in place. I've got payroll set up with a payroll company. All my employees are getting a W-2 from this company. And it's a pain in the butt to change everything. It's a hassle. If you just get it right from the beginning, you don't have to deal with that. And the bigger it gets, the harder and more expensive it is to deal with it.
And that's something I would underline, because I used to do restructuring and things like that. And people say, oh, you can just fix it after the fact. It's like, no, you can't. As you
Yeah,
said, there's contracts that you can, but it's always cheaper to do it right up
it's a
front.
hassle. It's a real hassle. Like I have like some of my like we do like a restructuring for somebody, and if for example, if you've got government contracts, forget it. You can't change your company structure. Like no government agency, if you say, you know what, I've got the wrong company structure here, I need to change my company structure. I just registered a new company. Hey, can we redo all these contracts in my new company's name? Most of your government agencies, they're like, no, we don't have time for that. We don't care. Like,
Yeah.
they just don't care. They're not going to do it. So you're stuck either with that structure or you lose the client because they'll just find somebody else.
Yeah.
They don't care. And that can be the case also if you have big clients, like big corporate clients. They don't want to jump through hoops to change contracts and all that stuff. It's fine. It's easier to do. For example, like if you have a smaller business and people pay you per thing you do, like you don't have like these long-term big complicated contracts, it's okay in that scenario. But like sometimes it is exceptionally difficult to do. And even then, like let's say you got an e-commerce store. Let's say you got an e-commerce store, you got a Shopify and an Amazon store, maybe you're selling on the Walmart marketplace or something like that, and you realize your business structure is wrong, you need to fix it. Well, changing your Amazon seller account or your Walmart marketplace seller account to a new entity, oh my God, they make you jump through so many hoops. It is possible,
Yeah.
but they make you jump through so many hoops. You risk losing your history of your account, like with all your reviews and that sort of thing. You like if you have a 4.8 on Amazon, you don't want to lose a 4.8 on Amazon. Like, so you might end up like, well, forget it. I'll just stay with this old structure. But now this old structure, you're paying 40% in tax when you could be paying 5% in tax or something like that, right? So a lot of times I think people don't do those things, proper planning things in the beginning, and then kind of tagging along to that. I think what a lot of people do, Americans anyway, what they do is they're like, well, I read on Reddit I should just do an LLC, and so they might say, oh, I live in California, but California has this $800 a year franchise tax, and I read on Reddit that I could just register an LLC in New Mexico and it's only $50 and I don't even have to file an annual report. So I don't have to pay that tax in California. So I'm just going to do it myself, and I'm just going to go online and do it myself. And I've got a buddy who lives in Albuquerque. I'll just use his home address as my registered address for the company, and it only cost me $50 to start the company. So first of all, there are about 10 layers of stupidity in what I just said. So like, first of all, if you live in California, you really need to be registered in California because California Department of Revenue is going to come after you hard and force you to register it in California anyway. Second of all, you should never use a friend's address for your registered address. There's major legal problems associated with that. Is it technically possible? Yeah. Can you do it legally? Yes. Or technically, yes, but down the road, it can create legal problems for you. Is it possible? Sure. Is it smart? Absolutely not. It's stupid. Another thing, like if you like, well, I live in Iowa, I'll register my LLC in Iowa. Well, I don't want to pay the extra $200 a year to have a registered agent and have somebody do it for me. That is very short-sighted thinking. You just spend all this money launching a business, and the fundamental thing that protects your wealth and protects that business is privacy and using a proper legal, like what's called a commercial registered agent. That is the fundamental core thing of properly structuring your business. And you don't want to spend $200 a year to protect the thing that's supposed to be the livelihood of your family.
Yeah.
My God, how ridiculous is that concept? Like, so like I see that as that's always a big mistake, especially with new founders. Like, I'll just do it myself. I'll just register it myself. I live in South Carolina. I'll just go on the South Carolina Secretary of State website and register this LLC myself. Huge mistake, major mistake to do that.
Well, I want to point out something you said earlier. You're doing something so critical without knowing what to ask.
Yeah, right. So to your point, like you might not, going back to the guy in South Carolina, well, I'll just go on the South Carolina Secretary of State website and do it myself. he might have gone on Reddit or Facebook or something, and somebody said, "Oh, you don't need a registered agent. Just do it yourself. Use your home address." Well, you might think you're doing a smart thing because, hey, I went on Reddit and asked this question, and I got like a bunch of people that told me you just crowdsourced like the legal structure of your business from people on Reddit, for God's sakes.
Unknown people on Reddit. Just gonna point out.
Yeah, unknown people on Reddit who don't know anything about you, your business, your situation. They may be completely wrong in their own situation. Like I run into this all the time, especially with like digital nomad type people that are like, I'm a German living in Thailand with a software company. Where should I register my company? And they'll read on Facebook or Reddit and they'll say, hey, just register the company in Hong Kong and you won't have to pay tax anywhere. Go for it. Oh my God. Like it's so many problems with that. Like so many holes in that thing. People give you advice. Number one, they can be completely wrong themselves.
Yep.
They might have problems or soon to have problems themselves on what they just advise you to do because they kind of projected their situation onto you. You took their projection and said, hey, that sounds good. Let's do that. You know, like you can't assume your situation is the same as theirs, number one. Number two, you can't assume they know what they're talking about in the first place.
Yeah.
Like talk to a professional. Literally, your company structure, you could hire somebody. Like we do this all the time. Like you could hire us for 1 hour to get on the call with you to make sure you're doing exactly the right thing. It costs you a few $100 and it's done. You don't have a legal problem. Like you have a proper legal structure from the beginning. Like
so
this
I'm
is
gonna
not a place to get cheap.
Yeah. Second that. I've fixed so many messes and it's never cheap to fix a mess. So I'm just going to interrupt here and say, if you're thinking about going and launching a new company, talk to Bobby and his team, because if you invest a few $100 with him, it will save you thousands of dollars of pain later. Is that fair?
Or more. I mean, I had a client, we don't really have time to go too much into detail, but I had a client a couple of years ago who did hire me for a 1 hour consultation. He had just been sued and he had registered his own company. He did it himself. He was the registered agent. He put him and his wife's name on there, his home address as the registered address and the registered agent, him and his wife. He got sued. They sued him personally too because they found his information, home information and personal. So sued him and his wife in the company. If he would have just had the proper structure from the beginning, it would have saved him $800,000. $800,000.
Yeah, but good thing he saved a few $100, right?
Yeah. But he said so. He'd been in business for like 5 years, and by the way, $200 is like the high end for registered agent service. But let's say you paid $200 a year for 5 years. You paid $1,000 to have a registered agent, and let's say you paid $500 for a consultation at the beginning of that to make sure the structure was correct. So $1,500 total investment over a 5-year window to make sure everything was done correctly. $1,500 or $800,000. You know,
I know where I'd go. Now, I want to be mindful of your time, Bobby. Where can people go to connect with you, find out how they can work with you?
Yeah. So our main website, it's businessanywhere.io. You can find us there, businessanywhere.io. We have a contact page there. We have like there's a button you can schedule a free 15-minute call with one of our team members if you got like specific questions. But if you have more like detailed questions, like how to structure your business or something like that, that's not for the free 15-minute call. That's more like, hey, I need to register an LLC. Which button should I click? Or do I need this or this in the structure? And so we have a consultation option on there. If you need more in-depth planning, you've got a more complex situation, especially if you have a location-independent business, and especially if you're living out of your home country. Our other website for that is globalwealthprotection.com.
I love it. Well, thank you for hanging out with me and being on the show today, Bobby.
I appreciate it, Jeff. Yeah, I think we probably could have gone on for 2 more hours, it seems like. So we'll do it
We'll
again
have a
sometime.
follow-up, I promise.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime. Thanks again for having me on.